Victoria Thornton grabbed Elena's dress and ripped it from her body in one violent motion. 300 guests watched. 300 phones recorded. Elena stood there in her underwear, shaking, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she begged, looking at her husband. "Marcus, help me." He turned his back and walked away. What none of them knew, Elena's father was watching everything through hidden cameras. And he had spent 3 years preparing for this exact moment. Stay until the end, because the revenge he delivered will leave you speechless. Comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning. Elena Ashford sat in her small apartment holding the cream-colored envelope with trembling fingers. The return address read, "The Thornton Estate," in elegant gold lettering. She already knew what was inside. Her own wedding invitation, designed, printed, and sent by her future mother-in-law without consulting her once. She opened it anyway. "Mr. and Mrs. Harold Thornton request the pleasure of your company at the marriage of their son, Marcus William Thornton, to Elena Marie Ashford." Her name looked small on that invitation, almost like an afterthought. Elena set it down and walked to her window. Outside, the city of Boston moved along without caring about her troubles. People rushed to work. Cars honked. Life continued. She picked up her phone and called the one person who would understand. "Dad." "Baby girl." Richard Ashford's voice was warm but concerned. "What's wrong?" "They sent out the wedding invitations. Without asking me about anything. The date, the venue, the guest list, Victoria decided everything." A long pause. "Do you want me to make some calls?" "No." Elena closed her eyes. "I love Marcus. I want to marry him. I wish his family would accept me." "Elena." Her father's voice hardened slightly. "You know what I think about this. These people. I know, Dad. But Marcus is different. He's not like them." Another pause, this one heavier. "I hope you're right, baby girl. But remember what I told you. If you ever need me, I'll call. I promise." She hung up and stared at the invitation again. 3 weeks until she became Elena Thornton. 3 weeks until she joined a family that had made it abundantly clear she didn't belong. But she loved Marcus. And love was supposed to be enough, wasn't it, Jen? Elena Ashford was not who the Thorntons thought she was. On paper, she was nobody. A business student at Boston University. A girl who lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment. A young woman who worked part-time at a coffee shop to pay her bills. The truth was far different. Her father, Richard Ashford, had built Ashford Global Industries from nothing. Starting with a single construction company at age 22, he had expanded into real estate, banking, technology, and manufacturing. By the time Elena was born, he was worth $2 billion. By the time she turned 18, that number had grown to $50 billion. Elena had grown up surrounded by wealth most people couldn't imagine. Private jets, yachts, a mansion in Connecticut with 27 rooms. Summers in the Hamptons, winters in Aspen. Birthday parties that cost more than most people earned in a year. But Elena had also watched that wealth poison everything it touched. She watched her mother's so-called friends circle like vultures, always wanting something. She watched business partners smile at her father's face while plotting behind his back. She watched distant relatives appear out of nowhere when they needed money, then disappear when they got it. And she watched her mother, beautiful Catherine Ashford, die at 42, from a loneliness that all the money in the world couldn't cure. After the funeral, 18-year-old Elena sat with her father in his study. "I don't want this life, Dad." Richard looked at his daughter, his only child, his whole world, and waited. "I want to find someone who loves me for me. Not for your money, not for what I can give them. Just me." "And how do you plan to do that?" "I want to change my name, move away, live like a normal person." Most fathers would have argued. Most fathers would have said it was foolish, dangerous, naive. Richard Ashford simply nodded. Okay. Your mother and I." He stopped, his voice catching. We had nothing when we met. I was working construction. She was waitressing. Those were the happiest years of our lives before all this. He gestured at the mansion around them. I understand what you're looking for. You're not going to try to stop me. No. But I want you to promise me something. Anything. Richard leaned forward, his eyes intense. If you ever need me, truly need me, you call. No matter what, no matter how bad things get. You call, and I will come. Elena hugged her father tightly. I promise. 3 days later, Elena Ashford became Elena Mitchell. She moved to Boston, enrolled at BU, and started a new life. For 4 years, she was happy. Then, she met Marcus Thornton. Marcus was everything Elena thought she wanted. He was handsome, tall, with dark hair and green eyes that seemed to see right through her. He was charming, making her laugh until her stomach hurt. He was ambitious, talking about his dreams for his family's real estate business with a passion that Elena found irresistible. And most importantly, he seemed genuinely kind. They met in a business ethics class. Elena had dropped her books in the hallway, papers scattering everywhere. Marcus helped her pick them up. Here. He handed her a stack of notes. I think this belongs to you. Their hands touched. Elena felt a spark she'd never experienced before. Thanks. She smiled nervously. I'm Elena. Marcus. He smiled back. That's a beautiful name. They talked for 2 hours that day, sitting on a bench outside the library. Marcus told her about growing up in his family's shadow, about wanting to prove himself, about feeling like he was never good enough for his parents' expectations. Elena recognized that feeling. She understood it. Maybe that's why she fell in love with him. They dated for a year. Marcus was attentive, romantic, present. He brought her flowers. He remembered the little things. He made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. When he proposed on a snowy January evening, Elena said yes without hesitation. She called her father that night. I'm getting married, Dad. A long silence. Tell me about him. His name is Marcus Thornton. His family owns Thornton Real Estate. They're big in commercial properties around New England. I know who the Thorntons are. Something in her father's voice made Elena pause. And I want you to be happy, but I want you to be careful too. What do you mean? The Thorntons have a certain reputation. Old money, old attitudes. They don't accept outsiders easily. Marcus isn't like that. I hope you're right. Another pause. Have you told him who you really are? Elena hesitated. No. Why not? Because I need to know he loves me for me, not for your money. If I tell him the truth now, I'll never know for sure. Richard was quiet for a moment. That's a dangerous game, baby girl. I know, but I need to do this. Then do it. But remember, if I ever need you, I'll call. I remember. Good. Because I have a feeling you might need to make that call sooner than you think. Elena hung up, pushing away the unease in her chest. Her father was just being overprotective. Marcus loved her. His family would learn to love her too. Everything would be fine. Everything was not fine. Elena met Victoria Thornton for the first time 3 weeks after the engagement. Marcus drove her to the family estate in Connecticut, a sprawling mansion that made Elena want to laugh. If only they knew what real wealth looked like. Victoria was waiting in the parlor. She was elegant in the way that old money often was, perfectly styled, gray hair, tasteful jewelry, a posture that screamed finishing school. She looked at Elena the way someone might look at a stain on expensive carpet. So, Victoria didn't offer her hand. You're the girl Marcus wants to marry. Yes, Mrs. Thornton, it's wonderful to meet you. Is it? Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Marcus tells me you're a student, living in a tiny apartment, working in a coffee shop. Yes, ma'am, I'm finishing my business degree. How industrious. The word sounded like an insult. Tell me, Elena, what exactly do you see in my son? Elena felt her face flush. I love him. He's kind and thoughtful and... Let me rephrase. Victoria leaned forward slightly. What do you want from my son? I don't want anything from him except his love. Victoria laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. My dear, everyone wants something. The question is simply how honest they are about it. She stood. Marcus will marry who he chooses. I can't stop that. But don't expect me to welcome you with open arms. You're not what I wanted for my son. What did you want for him? Victoria looked at her coldly. Someone worthy of the Thornton name. She walked out without another word. Marcus found Elena sitting alone in the garden an hour later. Hey. He sat beside her. What happened? You look upset. Your mother. Elena's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. She made it very clear that I'm not welcome here. Marcus sighed. She's like that with everyone. Don't take it personally. She asked what I want from you, like I'm some kind of gold digger. She'll come around. Will she? Give her time. Marcus took her hand. She just needs to get to know you. Elena wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that love could conquer the cold in Victoria's eyes, the judgment in her voice, the dismissal in her posture. Maybe you should talk to her. Tell her. Tell her what? Marcus laughed softly. That's just how she is. You can't change her. You just have to work around her. Work around her. You know what I mean. Be patient. Be agreeable. Don't make waves. Eventually she'll accept you. Elena stared at him. You want me to just take it? I want you to understand how things work in my family. Marcus squeezed her hand. It's not personal. It's just how it is. Something cold settled in Elena's stomach, but she pushed it away. This was just one bad day. Marcus loved her. That was what mattered. Okay. She forced a smile. I'll try harder. That's my girl. He kissed her forehead and walked back toward the house. Elena stayed in the garden alone, wondering why those 3 words, "That's my girl," suddenly felt so wrong. The wedding was beautiful and miserable in equal measure. Victoria controlled everything. The venue, the Thornton estate. The flowers, white roses, Victoria's favorite. The guest list, 300 people, most of whom Elena had never met. The dress, elegant but conservative, Victoria approved. Elena's father wasn't even invited. It's a small wedding, Victoria had said. Family only. 300 guests was not a small wedding, but Elena said nothing. She was trying harder, being patient, not making waves exactly like Marcus had asked. Richard Ashford understood. I'll be watching, baby girl, he said over the phone the night before. I'm always watching. What does that mean? It means I love you, and I'm here if you need me. The ceremony was efficient. Vows were exchanged. Rings were placed on fingers. Marcus kissed her, and 300 strangers applauded. Elena was now Elena Thornton. The reception that followed set the tone for the next 3 years of her life. Victoria made a toast. To my son, she said, raising her champagne glass, who has always exceeded our expectations, and to his bride. May she learn what it means to be part of this family. The emphasis on bride was unmistakable. Not daughter-in-law, not Elena, just bride, a role, not a person. Sophia, Marcus's younger sister, was next. I'm so happy for you, Marcus. She smiled sweetly. And Elena, welcome to the family. I'm sure you'll adjust. The word hung in the air. Adjust. Like Elena was a problem to be solved. Harold Thornton. Marcus's father said nothing at all. He simply raised his glass, nodded once, and returned to his conversation with a business associate. Elena sat at the head table, surrounded by people, feeling more alone than she ever had in her life. Marcus leaned over. See, that wasn't so bad. She looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. 3 years passed. 3 years of being Victoria's favorite target. 3 years of Sophia's sweet poison. 3 years of Harold's cold indifference. 3 years of Marcus's endless excuses. That's just how she is. You're being too sensitive. Just try harder. Can't you see she's making an effort? Elena heard those words so many times they lost all meaning. She tried harder. She was patient. She didn't make waves, and nothing changed. Victoria made her serve tea to her society friends, introducing her as the girl Marcus married, rather than by name. She criticized Elena's clothes, her hair, her manners, her voice, everything she could think of. Sophia invited Elena to lunches just to humiliate her in front of her friends. Don't you think it's sweet that Marcus married someone so simple? She would say, her smile never faltering. He could have had anyone you know. Harold continued to look through Elena like she wasn't there. 3 years of family dinners, and he had never once asked her a direct question. And Marcus watched it all happen and did nothing. Can't you talk to them? Elena asked one night, frustrated beyond words. About what? About how they treat me. Your mother makes me feel like garbage, Marcus. Your sister humiliates me constantly. Your father acts like I don't exist. Marcus sighed heavily. They're not going to change, Elena. You just have to accept that. Accept it? It's not that bad. You're exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. Your mother called me hired help in front of her bridge club last week. She was joking. She wasn't joking. Elena? Marcus's voice hardened slightly. This is my family. I'm not going to fight with them over every little thing. If you can't handle that, maybe you need to think about what you really want. Elena stared at him. What I really want? You know what I mean. She did know. She knew exactly what he meant. Shut up and take it. Or leave. That was the choice her husband was giving her. Elena almost called her father that night. She held her phone in her hand for an hour, staring at his contact information. One call, and all of this could be over. Her father would come. He would fix everything. He would show the Thorntons what real power looked like. But she put the phone down. Because she still loved Marcus. Because she still believed he would change. Because some stubborn part of her refused to admit defeat. She would try one more time. She would be more patient. She would work harder. Maybe the anniversary party would be different. The anniversary party was Victoria's idea. 3 years of marriage, she announced at a family dinner. We should celebrate properly. Elena felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was Victoria's way of finally accepting her. Maybe after 3 years, she was ready to welcome Elena into the family. That sounds lovely, Mother, Marcus smiled. What did you have in mind? A party, of course. At the estate, 300 guests, the best of Boston society. And what should I do to help? Elena asked. Victoria looked at her with something that might have been amusement. Just show up, dear. That's all you need to do. Those words echoed in Elena's mind later. Just show up. So simple, so dismissive. But she pushed away her doubts. This was a good thing. A party meant Victoria was finally acknowledging her marriage. Things were going to get better. She had never been more wrong about anything in her life. The night of the party arrived. Elena stood in front of her mirror adjusting the cream-colored dress she'd bought for the occasion. It wasn't designer. It wasn't expensive. But she thought it was pretty. Marcus came up behind her. Ready? Yes. She smiled at his reflection. I'm actually excited. Your mother planning this party, it feels like a step forward. Marcus's expression flickered for just a moment. Something passed across his face that Elena couldn't read. What? She asked. Nothing. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Let's go. They drove to the Thornton estate in silence. The party was already in full swing when they arrived. 300 people filled the mansion. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, everyone who mattered in Boston society. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. A live orchestra played classical music. Champagne fountains bubbled endlessly. Ice sculptures glittered in the candlelight. It was spectacular, and Elena had never felt more out of place. The other women wore designer gowns that cost more than cars. Their jewels could fund a small country. They looked at Elena's simple dress with barely concealed contempt. Sophia found her almost immediately. "Elena, you look so comfortable." She smiled sweetly. "I love how you don't worry about fitting in." "Thank you." Elena forced herself to respond calmly. "You look beautiful as always." "I know." Sophia air-kissed her cheek. "Enjoy the party. I'm sure Mother has something special planned." She walked away, leaving Elena with a feeling of dread she couldn't explain. Something was wrong. She could feel it. But before she could figure out what, Victoria took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria announced, "thank you all for coming to celebrate my son's anniversary." The room applauded politely. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of... Victoria paused dramatically. Her hand flew to her neck. "My necklace! Oh my God, my necklace is gone!" The room went silent. Victoria clutched her bare neck, her face a mask of horror. "The pink diamond. It's worth $3 million. It was right here an hour ago." 300 people started murmuring. Phones came out. The evening's entertainment had just begun. And then Victoria's eyes found Elena across the room. "You!" Victoria's voice was cold as ice. "You were in my dressing room earlier. I saw you." 300 pairs of eyes turned to Elena. Her blood ran cold. I was just looking for the bathroom." Her voice came out small, scared. "I didn't take anything." "She's lying." Sophia appeared at her mother's side. "I saw her too. She was definitely near Mother's jewelry case." "This is crazy." Elena's heart was pounding. "Why would I steal from you?" "Because that's what gold diggers do." Victoria's voice carried across the silent room. "You married my son for money. Everyone knows it. This is just proof of what you've always been." "Marcus." Elena looked desperately at her husband. Tell them I wouldn't do this." Marcus stood frozen by the champagne fountain. His face was pale. His eyes moved between Elena and his mother. "Marcus, please." He opened his mouth, closed it, and said nothing. Harold stepped forward. "Search her. Right now in front of everyone. If she's innocent, she has nothing to hide." "You can't be serious." Elena backed away. But Victoria and Sophia were already moving toward her. "If you won't cooperate," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "we'll do this the hard way." "Please." Elena's voice broke. "Please don't do this. I didn't take anything." But they didn't care about her pleas. Victoria grabbed her arm. Sophia grabbed the other. Elena fought, but there were 2 of them, and she was shaking so badly she could barely stand. The zipper of her dress came down. She screamed. The dress fell to the floor. And Elena Thornton stood in the middle of that ballroom, 300 people watching, 300 phones recording in nothing but her underwear. Victoria searched the dress violently, tearing the fabric, shaking it out. "Nothing here. But she must have hidden it somewhere." "Get her out of here." Harold's voice was ice. "Remove this thief from our property." Elena looked at Marcus one final time. He was already turning away. He was already walking toward the bar. He was already done with her. The security guards grabbed her arms and dragged her through the crowd. People spit insults as she passed. Gold digger, thief, trash, whore. They threw her out the front gates. She collapsed on the cold ground, shivering, broken, destroyed. Inside, the orchestra started playing again. Inside, the party continued. Inside, her husband was getting a drink and pretending she didn't exist. A young valet saw her and rushed over with his jacket. He draped it over her shoulders without a word, his eyes filled with kindness. That small act of compassion from a stranger made Elena cry harder. She had nothing left. No dignity. No husband. No home. Nothing except one promise. One phone call. One father who was already watching everything. She borrowed the valet's phone with trembling hands and dialed the number she knew by heart. It rang once, twice. "Baby girl." Her father's voice was calm, but she could hear the fury underneath. "I saw everything." "Daddy, She couldn't stop sobbing. "Daddy, please, don't move. I'm already on my way." "They destroyed me. They—" "No." Richard Ashford's voice was steel-wrapped in ice. "They think they destroyed you, but what they actually did was sign their own death warrant." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Cameras, documents, shell companies, everything." Elena stopped breathing. "What?" "I told you I was watching. I meant it literally. I knew this family would hurt you eventually. I just needed them to show the world exactly who they were. You knew. I suspected. And now I have proof. 300 witnesses, 300 recordings, and evidence that's about to destroy everything they've ever built." A helicopter appeared in the sky, its spotlight cutting through the darkness. "Look up, baby girl. Daddy's here." Elena looked up as the helicopter descended, followed by a convoy of black SUVs stretching down the road. The gates of the Thornton estate began to shake, and inside the people who had just stripped a billionaire's daughter naked in front of 300 witnesses had no idea that their entire world was about to collapse. The helicopter touched down on the lawn of the Thornton estate like a thunderclap announcing the end of the world. Elena watched through tear-blurred eyes as the convoy of black SUVs rolled through the gates, 15 vehicles moving in perfect formation, their headlights cutting through the darkness like the eyes of predators. The security guards who had thrown her out minutes ago now stood frozen, unsure whether to stop this invasion or run from it. They chose to step aside. The center limousine door opened and Richard Ashford emerged. At 62 years old, Richard Ashford commanded attention the way a general commands an army. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and ice-blue eyes that could freeze a man's soul with a single glance. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than most people earned in a year, and his presence radiated power so absolute that even the night itself seemed to bend around him. Behind him came an army of his own. 20 security personnel in black suits moving with military precision. 7 lawyers carrying leather briefcases stuffed with documents. And walking beside Richard looking official and deadly serious was James Morrison, the police commissioner of Boston himself. News helicopters began circling overhead. Someone had tipped off every media outlet in the city. Later, Elena would learn that someone was her father, who had made a single phone call 30 minutes ago that guaranteed every news station, every newspaper, every online outlet would be here to witness what came next. Richard walked straight to his daughter. Elena sat on the cold ground, wrapped in a stranger's jacket, shivering violently. Her makeup was ruined, streaked down her face in black rivers of mascara and tears. Her hair was disheveled, her body was barely covered. But when she looked up at her father, she saw something that made her heart crack open. His eyes were wet. Richard Ashford, the man who had built a $50 billion empire, the man who had destroyed competitors and crushed enemies, the man who showed no weakness to anyone, had tears in his eyes. He knelt beside her on the cold ground, not caring about his expensive suit, not caring about the cameras, not caring about anything except his daughter. "Baby girl." His voice was soft, tender, completely at odds with the fury burning in his eyes. "I'm here now." "Daddy." Elena collapsed against his chest, sobbing. They stripped me in front of everyone." "I know." He held her tightly. "I saw everything. Marcus just walked away. I know." "Why?" She looked up at him, broken. "Why would they do this?" Richard's jaw tightened. "Because they thought you were weak. They thought you were alone. They thought they could destroy you without consequences." He stood, pulling Elena gently to her feet. Then he removed his coat, a custom-made cashmere piece worth $50,000, and wrapped it around her shoulders himself. They were wrong about all of it. Richard's voice hardened into something cold and dangerous. And now they're going to learn exactly how wrong they were. He turned toward the mansion where 300 faces pressed against windows and crowded in doorways trying to see what was happening. "Which one of you touched my daughter?" His voice carried like thunder across the estate. Inside the mansion, the party had descended into chaos. The orchestra had stopped playing, The champagne fountain stood forgotten. 300 of Boston's most powerful people clustered together, phones in hand, watching the scene unfold outside, with a mixture of horror and fascination. Victoria Thornton pushed through the crowd to the front entrance, her face a mask of indignation. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. "This is a private event. You're trespassing on our property." Richard smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Am I?" He walked forward and the crowd parted before him like water before a ship. "Let's discuss that inside, shall we? I think your guests will be very interested in what I have to say." He didn't wait for permission. He simply walked through the front doors as if he owned the place, because as everyone was about to discover, he did. Elena walked beside her father wrapped in his coat, her head held high despite the tears still wet on her cheeks. The security team fanned out around them. The lawyers followed in precise formation. Commissioner Morrison stayed close, his presence lending official weight to whatever was about to happen. They walked through that mansion like conquerors. Victoria followed, sputtering with rage. "You can't just barge in here! Harold, do something!" Harold Thornton emerged from the crowd, his face red with anger and confusion. "Who the hell are you? I'm calling the police." "No need," Richard gestured to Commissioner Morrison. "They're already here." "This is outrageous." Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. "Security, remove these people immediately." The security guards looked at each other uncertainly. Then they looked at Richard's team, 20 professionals who clearly knew how to handle themselves and made the wise decision to stay exactly where they were. Richard took the microphone from a stunned server. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." His voice was calm, controlled, almost pleasant. "I apologize for interrupting your celebration, but I'm afraid we have some urgent business to discuss." "Who are you?" someone shouted from the crowd. Richard smiled again. "An excellent question. Allow me to introduce myself properly." He paused, letting the silence build. "My name is Richard Ashford, founder and CEO of Ashford Global Industries." The reaction was immediate. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Whispers exploded like wildfire. Everyone in this room knew the name Ashford Global. Everyone knew the name Richard Ashford. He was one of the wealthiest men in America, worth more than $50 billion, with holdings in real estate, banking, technology, and a dozen other industries. Some of you may recognize the name. Richard continued, enjoying the growing horror on Victoria's face. Ashford Global Industries, $52 billion in assets, holdings across every major sector, one of the largest private conglomerates in the world. He pulled Elena closer to his side. "This woman, the woman you just stripped naked in front of 300 people, the woman you called a thief and a gold digger. The woman you threw out of this house like garbage." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. "She's my daughter, my only child, my sole heir." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's face went white. Harold looked like he might collapse. Sophia, standing in the corner, suddenly seemed very interested in disappearing into the crowd. And Marcus. Marcus Thornton stood frozen near the bar, a glass of champagne still in his hand, his face a mask of pure shock. Elena came from more wealth than anyone in this room will ever see. Richard's voice dropped to something dangerous. But she wanted something money can't buy. She wanted to be loved for who she is, not what she has. So she changed her name. She lived modestly. She worked jobs. She found herself a man she thought would cherish her. He looked directly at Marcus. "Instead, she found your family." Marcus's glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound was startlingly loud in the silent room. "Mr. Ashford?" Victoria stepped forward, her voice suddenly sweet, placating. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding. If we had known—" "If you had known what?" Richard interrupted. "You would have treated her like a human being. You would have shown her basic dignity. You would have welcomed her into your family instead of humiliating her for 3 years. Let me tell you what you would have done, Victoria." Richard's voice hardened. "You would have fawned over her. You would have praised her. You would have fallen over yourself to make her comfortable. Because that's what people like you do. You calculate a person's worth based on their bank account. He turned to address the crowd. My daughter lived among you for 3 years. 3 years of being called worthless. 3 years of being treated like dirt. And not one of you, not a single person in this room, ever bothered to see her as anything other than an inconvenience. His security team had been quietly setting up equipment while he spoke. Now the large screens that had been displaying photos of Marcus and Elena flickered to life with new content. Let me show you who my daughter really is. The screens filled with images. Elena as a child standing on the deck of a yacht larger than most houses. Elena at 15 attending a charity gala in Paris. Elena at 18 cutting the ribbon at a children's hospital her father had built. Official documents showing her real identity, birth certificates, trust fund papers, everything. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This is the woman you stripped naked tonight. Richard's voice was ice. This is the woman you accused of stealing a necklace worth $3 million, a woman whose trust fund contains more money than this entire estate is worth. This is slander, Victoria tried to rally. That necklace was stolen. We have witnesses. Do you? Richard snapped his fingers. The screens changed again. Because I have something better than witnesses. I have proof. The footage began playing. It showed Sophia Thornton entering her mother's dressing room hours before the party started. She looked around nervously, checking to make sure she was alone. Then she walked straight to her mother's jewelry case, opened it, and removed the pink diamond necklace. She slipped it into her purse and walked out. The room erupted in gasps. That's fabricated, Sophia screamed. That's not real. Keep watching. The second video showed Sophia in the garden, hiding the necklace under a decorative stone near the rose bushes. She looked around again, made sure no one was watching, and hurried back inside. Still fabricated? Richard asked coldly. The third video was the killing blow. It showed Victoria and Sophia in a private room, talking in hushed tones. Are you sure about this? Sophia's voice came through the speakers clearly. What if it doesn't work? It will work. Victoria's voice was confident. We'll accuse her of stealing the necklace, search her in front of everyone, humiliate her so completely that Marcus will have no choice but to divorce her. What if he doesn't? He will. He's weak. He'll always choose us over her. We just need to give him an excuse. And if she denies it? Victoria laughed. It was an ugly sound. Who's going to believe her? She's a nobody. A gold digger who got lucky. By the time we're done with her tonight, she'll be too ashamed to ever show her face again. The video ended. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. 300 people stood frozen watching as the conspiracy that had destroyed Elena played out on screen. They saw everything. The theft, the setup, the plan to humiliate and destroy a woman for the crime of loving the wrong man. Victoria's face had gone from white to gray. She swayed slightly as if she might faint. Would you like to explain this? Richard asked quietly. That video is you doctored it. Commissioner Morrison. Richard turned to the police chief. Is this footage authentic? Morrison stepped forward. We received these recordings 3 hours ago and have already verified their authenticity. The metadata confirms the date and time. Our technical team found no evidence of tampering or manipulation. Thank you, Commissioner. Richard turned back to Victoria. Any other excuses you'd like to try? Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Sophia crumpled to her knees, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. It was Mother's idea. She made me do it. You lying little... Victoria started toward her daughter. Don't. Richard's voice stopped her cold. Touch either of them, and I'll add assault charges to the list. Assault charges. Harold finally spoke, his voice weak. What are you talking about? Oh, Harold. Richard's smile was predatory. You didn't think I came here just to show some videos, did you? He nodded to his lawyers. Let me explain exactly what's going to happen to your family. The lawyers stepped forward, opening their briefcases, pulling out stacks of documents. First, let's talk about this beautiful estate you're all so proud of. Richard gestured at the mansion around them. This property is mortgaged through Boston Heritage Bank. What you probably don't know is that Boston Heritage Bank was quietly acquired by Ashford Financial Holdings 6 months ago, which means your mortgage, all $32 million of it, is now owned by me. Harold's face went ashen. You have 90 days to pay it in full. I'm guessing that might be difficult. You can't, Harold started. I already did. Richard cut him off. Now let's discuss Thornton Real Estate, your precious family business. The company your grandfather built and your father expanded and you've spent your entire life protecting. He held up a document. Over the past 2 years, I've been acquiring shares in Thornton Real Estate through various shell companies, quietly, patiently, waiting for exactly this moment. He smiled. As of yesterday, I own 68% of your company. I am now the majority shareholder, which means that effectively, Harold, you work for me. That's impossible. Harold lunged forward, but Richard's security team blocked him easily. Check with your lawyers tomorrow morning. They'll confirm everything. Richard turned to Victoria, who stood frozen like a statue. Your personal trust fund, Victoria. The one you use to buy your designer clothes and take your European vacations and fund your little society parties. It's managed by Ashford Private Wealth. I froze it 20 minutes ago. Every account, every investment, every dollar. Victoria made a strangled sound. And Sophia? Richard looked at the young woman still crying on the floor. Those boutiques you're so proud of. The ones you use to pretend you're a businesswoman instead of just a spoiled child playing dress-up. They're built on properties owned by Ashford Commercial Holdings. Your leases are terminated effective midnight tonight. By tomorrow morning, you'll be locked out of every location. You can't do this, Sophia wailed. This is illegal. Every single action I've taken is completely legal. Richard's voice was cold as winter. My lawyers have spent 2 years making sure of it. Every acquisition documented, every purchase verified, every contract ironclad. He turned to face the crowd of 300 people who had watched Elena's humiliation with such entertainment. Let this be a lesson to everyone in this room. That woman you laughed at tonight, that woman you called a gold digger, that woman you watched being stripped naked and did nothing to stop it. His voice rose. She has more wealth, more class, and more integrity than every person in this ballroom combined. She chose to live modestly to find real love. Instead, she found all of you snakes in expensive clothes, predators with designer smiles. The room was utterly silent. The Thornton family has lost everything tonight, their home, their business, their wealth, their reputation, and it's entirely their own fault. He looked at Victoria, Harold, Sophia, each of them in turn. You could have treated my daughter with basic human decency. Instead, you chose cruelty. You chose humiliation. You stripped her naked in front of 300 people, and not one of you hesitated. He gestured to Commissioner Morrison. Now, unless you want me to press criminal charges for assault, conspiracy, theft, and fraud, I suggest the Thornton family start packing. You have 90 days to vacate my property. If even one of you contacts my daughter again, I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure you spend the rest of your lives in prison. Victoria fell to her knees, her designer gown pooling around her like a deflated balloon. Please, she begged. Please, Mr. Ashford. We didn't know. We'll apologize. We'll make it right. Please don't do this to us. Richard looked down at her with contempt that could freeze fire. Did you show mercy when you stripped my daughter? Did you listen when she begged you to stop? Did you care when she cried? Victoria sobbed harder. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. He turned away from her dismissively, and that's when Marcus finally moved. He had been standing frozen by the bar this entire time, watching his family's destruction with the paralysis of a man who couldn't quite believe what was happening. But now he pushed through the crowd, his face desperate, panicked. "Elena!" He rushed toward her. "Elena, please, you have to help us." Richard's security team moved to block him, but Elena held up her hand. "Let him through." Marcus stumbled forward, falling to his knees in front of her. "Elena, please." He grabbed for her hands. "Tell your father to stop. I love you. You know I love you. This is all a misunderstanding." Elena looked down at the man she had married, the man she had loved for 4 years, the man she had built a life with, defended, endlessly believed in, even when he gave her nothing to believe in. She felt something shift inside her. Something that had been cracking for 3 years finally broke. "Do you love me, Marcus?" "Yes." His voice cracked. "Yes, of course I do. Please, you have to believe me." "Then why didn't you stop them?" Tonight." Elena's voice was steady calm, the calmest it had been in years. "When your mother accused me, when your sister lied, when they dragged me to the center of that room and ripped my clothes off my body." She pulled her hands free from his grasp. "Where were you, Marcus?" "I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. Everything happened so fast. You were 20 feet away." Elena's voice hardened. "I looked right at you. I called your name. I begged you to help me." "I know, but—" "And you turned your back. You walked to the bar and got a drink while 300 people watched your wife being stripped naked." "Elena." "That wasn't shock, Marcus. That was a choice. You chose to let it happen." "I didn't mean—" "You never mean anything." Elena felt tears streaming down her face, but her voice stayed steady. 3 years, Marcus. 3 years of your mother humiliating me. 3 years of your sister poisoning me. 3 years of your father ignoring me like I wasn't even human. I know they can be difficult. And every time I came to you, every time I begged you to help, every time I asked you to stand up for me, what did you say?" Marcus's face crumpled. "You said, try harder. You said, be patient. You said, that's just how they are." Elena's voice broke. "You told me to accept being treated like garbage because confronting your family was too uncomfortable for you. I was trying to keep the peace. You were being a coward." The word hung in the air. "You let them destroy me piece by piece for 3 years because you were too weak to say a single word in my defense." "I love you," Marcus whispered. "No." Elena shook her head slowly. "You don't. You don't know what love is. Love means standing beside someone when it's hard. Love means protecting the person you chose. Love means saying, 'This is my wife, and you will treat her with respect.'" She stepped back. "You never did any of those things. You never even tried." "Please." Marcus reached for her again. "I can change. I'll do better. I'll tell them—" "It's too late for that." Elena's voice was final. "You had 3 years to tell them. You had 3 years to be a husband. You chose not to." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm filing for divorce, tomorrow morning." Marcus's face went white. "You can't mean that. We can work through this. We can—" "And I'm taking nothing from you, Marcus." Elena continued as if he hadn't spoken. "No money, no property, no settlement, nothing. I don't understand. Because I never needed your wealth. I never wanted it. I just wanted you." Her voice cracked. "I just wanted you to love me enough to protect me. That's all I ever needed. And you couldn't even give me that." Marcus stared at her, tears streaming down his face. "The saddest part isn't what your family did to me tonight." Elena wiped her own tears. "It's that you let them do it. You watched them tear me apart, and you didn't move. You didn't speak. You just turned your back and walked away." "I'm sorry." Marcus was sobbing now, genuine tears of regret. "I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me. I'll change. I swear I'll change." "I already left you." Elena's voice was quiet. "The moment you turned your back on me tonight, you lost me forever." Richard's lawyers stepped forward, papers in hand. "These are the divorce papers, Mrs. Thornton." The lead attorney held out a pen. They're ready for your signature. Elena took the pen without hesitation. She signed her name clearly, firmly, without a single tremor in her hand. Elena Ashford. 2 years of marriage ended with a signature. 4 years of love erased in ink. Marcus collapsed completely, his sobs echoing through the silent ballroom. But Elena felt nothing but relief. Nothing but freedom. Nothing but the lightness of finally letting go of something that had been drowning her. She handed the pen back to the lawyer and turned to her father. "Can we go now? I want to go home." Richard put his arm around her shoulders. "Of course, baby girl. Let's go home." They walked toward the door, leaving Marcus crying on his knees, leaving Victoria still begging for mercy, leaving Harold standing in shock, leaving Sophia sobbing on the floor. 300 phones had recorded everything. 300 witnesses had seen the Thornton family's destruction. By morning, this would be international news. By next week, the Thorntons would be the most infamous family in America. But Elena didn't care about any of that. She just wanted to go home. As they reached the door, she turned back one final time. Her eyes swept across the ballroom, the crystal chandeliers, the champagne fountains, the elegant decorations. All of it bought with money that would soon be gone. All of it meaningless. Her eyes found Marcus still on his knees, still crying. She felt something shift in her chest. Not love that was dead, but maybe something like pity. Something like sadness for what could have been. "Goodbye, Marcus," she said softly. Then she turned and walked out of the Thornton mansion forever. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. The helicopter waited on the lawn, its rotors still spinning. News crews had gathered at the gates, their cameras capturing everything. Richard helped Elena into the helicopter, settling her into a seat before sitting beside her. "How do you feel?" Elena considered the question. She was exhausted. She was humiliated. She was heartbroken. But underneath all of that, she felt something else. Something that felt almost like hope. "Free," she said finally. "I feel free." Richard squeezed her hand. "That's because you are. You're finally free." The helicopter lifted off, rising above the Thornton estate. Elena looked down at the mansion growing smaller below her, the place that had been her prison for 3 years, the place where she had lost herself trying to earn the approval of people who would never give it. She was leaving it all behind. The money, the manipulation, the humiliation, the husband who had never truly loved her. All of it was over now. The helicopter turned toward the city, toward the future, toward whatever came next. Behind them, the Thornton empire was already beginning to crumble. But Elena didn't look back. She was done looking back. The helicopter landed on the rooftop of the Ashford Tower just after midnight. Elena stepped out into the cold air, her father's coat still wrapped around her shoulders, her body still trembling with the aftermath of everything that had happened. The city sprawled below them, millions of lights twinkling like earthbound stars, completely unaware that one woman's life had just been torn apart and rebuilt in a single evening. Richard guided her inside, his hand steady on her back. The penthouse was warm, quiet, safe, everything the Thornton estate had never been. "Sit down." Richard led her to a sofa. "I'll have someone bring you something warm." "I don't need anything." "You need tea, and food, and rest." He sat beside her. "But first, we need to talk." Elena looked at her father, really looked at him for the first time since the helicopter. His face was tired, lined with worry, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "You knew," she said. "You knew what they would do to me." "I suspected." "For how long?" Richard was quiet for a moment. "From the beginning. From the moment you told me Marcus Thornton's name." "Then why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you warn me? Would you have listened?" Elena opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. The truth was painful, but it was still the truth. She had been so in love, so desperate to prove that she could find happiness on her own terms, that she would have dismissed any warning as overprotection. "No," she admitted. "I wouldn't have." "I know my daughter." Richard's voice was gentle. "You're stubborn. You're proud. You needed to see the truth for yourself, or you never would have believed it. So you just let me walk into a trap? I let you make your own choice, but I never left you unprotected. Richard reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. Let me show you something. He opened an app and handed her the phone. Elena stared at the screen. It showed a grid of camera feeds, dozens of them. The Thornton estate from every angle. The mansion's interior, the gardens, the driveway, even the private rooms. You've been watching the whole time. Every day for 3 years. Hidden cameras installed by my people during a routine maintenance visit before your wedding. Richard's voice was matter-of-fact. I saw everything they did to you, Elena. Every humiliation, every insult, every time Victoria made you serve tea to her friends like a servant. Why didn't you do something sooner? Because you asked me not to. Richard looked at her steadily. You said you wanted to make your marriage work on your own. You said you loved him. I respected that choice even when it killed me to watch. But tonight was different. Tonight they crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. His jaw tightened. When I saw them put their hands on you, when I saw them strip you in front of those people. He stopped, his voice catching. I've destroyed companies. I've ruined competitors. I've done things in business that most people would consider ruthless. Richard looked at his daughter with eyes full of pain. But I have never felt rage like I felt tonight. Watching my child be violated like that, and being too far away to stop it. You came as fast as you could. Not fast enough. He shook his head. I should have been there. I should have stopped it before it happened. You couldn't have known they would go that far. Yes, I could have. Richard's voice hardened. I've known Victoria Thornton for 30 years, Elena. We ran in the same circles before you were born. I knew exactly what kind of woman she was: vicious, calculating, cruel. I just hoped she would treat you differently because you were family. She was never going to accept me. No, she wasn't. Richard sighed heavily. Victoria Thornton has spent her entire life measuring people's worth by their bank accounts. When she looked at you, she didn't see a human being. She saw an obstacle to her son marrying someone appropriate. Someone rich. Someone she could control. Someone who would add to the Thornton prestige instead of threatening it. Richard shook his head. Your independence terrified her. Your strength made her feel inadequate. So she did what small, frightened people always do. She tried to destroy what she couldn't understand. Elena was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. The shell companies, she finally said. The stock purchases, the mortgage. You've been planning this for years. Since the day you got engaged. But you said you were just watching. You said you were letting me make my own choices. I was. But I was also preparing for the worst. Richard smiled grimly. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. That's how I built this empire. That's how I've protected everything I love. Including me. Especially you. He took her hand. You're my daughter Elena, my only child. Everything I have, every dollar, every company, every ounce of power I've accumulated exists to protect you. If I have to burn the world down to keep you safe, I'll do it without hesitation. Elena felt tears streaming down her face again. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for putting you through this. Don't apologize. You did nothing wrong. I married the wrong man. I trusted the wrong people. You loved someone. Richard cut her off gently. That's not a crime. That's not a weakness. You opened your heart to another person and they betrayed you. The fault is theirs, not yours. I should have listened to you. Maybe. Or maybe you needed to learn this lesson yourself. He squeezed her hand. The question now is what you do with it. Elena wiped her tears. What do you mean? I mean, what happens next? The Thorntons are finished, that much is certain. But what about you? What do you want your life to look like now? It was a question Elena hadn't allowed herself to consider. For 3 years, her entire existence had revolved around survival, surviving Victoria's cruelty, surviving Sophia's poison, surviving Marcus's indifference. She had forgotten how to think about the future. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't know who I am anymore." "Then that's where we start." Richard stood, pulling her gently to her feet. "But not tonight. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we begin rebuilding." He led her to a guest room that had always been hers, even during the years she'd been away. Everything was exactly as she'd left it when she moved out at 18. Her books, her photos, her childhood treasures. "Get some sleep, baby girl." Richard kissed her forehead. "I'll be right down the hall if you need anything." "Dad." He turned at the door. "Thank you for everything." Richard smiled a real smile, the first one she'd seen from him all night. "That's what fathers are for." He closed the door softly behind him. Elena stood alone in her childhood room, wrapped in her father's coat, finally safe. She walked to the window and looked out at the city, thinking about everything she'd lost and everything she'd gained. She had lost a husband, a marriage, 3 years of her life. But she had also lost the chains that had been holding her down. The expectations, the need for approval, the desperate belief that if she just tried harder, things would get better. Things were never going to get better with the Thorntons. She could see that now with the clarity that only comes from hitting rock bottom. The only way forward was up. Elena climbed into bed, pulling the covers around her like armor. For the first time in 3 years, she fell asleep without the knot of anxiety in her stomach, without the fear of what tomorrow would bring, without the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, things would be different. She knew exactly what tomorrow would bring. Justice. The morning came quickly. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere in the penthouse. She lay still for a moment, disoriented, before the memories of the previous night came flooding back. The party, the accusations, the stripping, the phones recording, Marcus walking away, her father arriving like an avenging angel. Everything. She got up slowly, her body aching in ways that had nothing to do with physical injury. The trauma of public humiliation leaves marks that don't show on the skin. She found clothes waiting for her, comfortable things from her old wardrobe that her father must have kept all these years. She dressed mechanically, then walked out to find Richard already at work. He sat at the dining table surrounded by lawyers and documents, his phone pressed to his ear. When he saw Elena, he held up one finger just a moment and finished his call. "The board meets at noon. Make sure everything is ready." He hung up and turned to his daughter. "Good morning. How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck." Elena sat down across from him. "What's happening?" "The fallout has begun." Richard slid a tablet across the table. "Take a look." Elena picked it up. The screen showed news headlines from every major outlet. Billionaire's secret daughter stripped at society party. Thornton family exposed in shocking humiliation. Scandal, Ashford heir reveals identity after 3 years in hiding. Video, mother-in-law and sister plotted to destroy innocent woman. It's everywhere. Elena scrolled through the articles, her stomach turning. Everyone knows. Everyone in the world, Richard confirmed. The videos from last night have been viewed over 50 million times. The Thornton name is finished. What about the criminal charges? Commissioner Morrison is handling it personally. Victoria and Sophia are being arrested this morning. Assault, conspiracy, theft of property, even though it was Victoria's own necklace, they used it to frame you for a crime which is fraud. And Harold? He wasn't directly involved in the assault, so the charges are different. But he's facing securities violations for some creative accounting his company has been doing. My forensic accountants found it months ago. I was saving it for the right moment. Elena set down the tablet. What about Marcus? Richard's expression hardened. What about him? Is he facing charges too? He could be. He witnessed the assault and did nothing to stop it. That makes him complicit in some jurisdictions. Richard studied his daughter carefully. Do you want him charged? Elena considered the question. Part of her wanted to say yes, wanted to see Marcus suffer the way she had suffered. But another part, a stronger part, felt only exhaustion. "No," she finally said. "He's not worth the energy. Let him live with what he did. That's punishment enough." Richard nodded slowly. "That's very generous of you?" "It's not generosity, it's indifference." Elena met her father's eyes. "I spent 3 years trying to make Marcus love me enough to protect me. 3 years hoping he would change. I'm done hoping. I'm done caring what happens to him." "That's healthy." "Is it?" Elena laughed bitterly. "It doesn't feel healthy. It feels empty." "Empty is the first step toward healing." Richard reached across the table and took her hand. "You've been carrying this marriage like a weight around your neck for years. Now that weight is gone. It's natural to feel empty. The question is what you fill that space with." "I don't know yet." "That's okay. You don't have to know today." He squeezed her hand. "But I want you to think about something." "What?" "Coming to work with me." Elena blinked. "What?" "Ashford Global Industries. You have a business degree. You're smart, capable, and you've just demonstrated more strength under pressure than most executives I know." Richard's eyes were serious. "I want you to join the company. Learn the business. Take your place as my heir, not just in name, but in practice." "Dad, I don't know anything about running a $50 billion company." "Neither did I when I started. I learned. You will too." He smiled. "Besides, you're not starting from scratch. You're starting with me." Elena was quiet, turning the idea over in her mind. For years, she had run away from her father's world, the wealth, the power, the responsibility. She had wanted a simple life, a normal life. But there was nothing simple or normal about what had happened to her. And maybe running away wasn't the answer anymore. Maybe it was time to face who she really was. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." Richard stood. "But right now we have some business to attend to." "What business?" "The Thornton board meeting. They're deciding what to do about the company now that I'm the majority shareholder." He smiled grimly. "I thought you might want to attend." Elena felt something stir in her chest. Something that felt almost like anticipation. "Yes," she said. "I would." The Thornton real estate headquarters was chaos when they arrived. News crews crowded the entrance, shouting questions at anyone who entered or exited. Security struggled to maintain order. Employees rushed around with panicked expressions, clearly uncertain whether they would still have jobs by the end of the day. Richard's convoy pulled up to the back entrance away from the cameras. Elena stepped out dressed now in a professional suit her father had provided Armani, perfectly tailored, a far cry from the simple dress she'd worn to the anniversary party. She looked like what she was, a billionaire's daughter, an Ashford heir. "Ready?" Richard asked. "Yes." They walked through the building together, flanked by lawyers and security. Employees stopped and stared. Whispers followed them like a wake. "Is that her? The one from the video? Richard Ashford's daughter?" Elena kept her head high, ignoring the whispers. She had spent 3 years being invisible, being dismissed, being treated like nothing. Today, she would show them exactly who she was. The boardroom was already full when they entered. 12 directors sat around a massive table, their faces a mixture of fear and resignation. Harold Thornton sat at the head of the table, looking like a man who had aged 20 years overnight. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. His hands trembled slightly as he shuffled papers. When Richard and Elena walked in, everyone stood. "Mr. Ashford," Harold's voice cracked. "Thank you for coming." "Sit down, Harold." Richard's voice was cold. "Let's not pretend this is a friendly visit." Everyone sat. Richard took a seat at the opposite end of the table from Harold, positioning himself as an equal, or rather, as a superior. Elena sat beside him, her presence a silent statement. "As you all know," Richard began, "I now own 68% of Thornton Real Estate. That makes me the majority shareholder and gives me controlling interest in this company." "Mr. Ashford," one of the directors spoke up, Surely we can discuss this like reasonable. I'm not interested in discussion. Richard cut him off. I'm interested in action. Here's what's going to happen. He nodded to his lawyers, who began distributing documents. Effective immediately, Harold Thornton is removed as CEO. He will retain his position on the board for now, but will have no operational authority. You can't do this. Harold half rose from his chair. I can, and I am. Section 4.2 of the company bylaws. Majority shareholders have the right to restructure executive leadership with board approval. Which brings us to the vote. Richard looked around the table at the directors. I'm asking the board to approve this restructuring. Anyone who votes against it should know that I'm prepared to liquidate this company entirely if necessary. I don't need Thornton real estate. I have plenty of real estate holdings of my own. But if you want to keep your jobs, you'll vote yes. The directors looked at each other nervously. Then one by one, hands went up. The vote was unanimous. Harold Thornton sat frozen, watching his family legacy slip away. Now, Richard continued, let's discuss the future of this company. For the next hour, Richard laid out his plans. Restructuring, new leadership, new direction. Some employees would be retained. Others would be let go. The Thornton name would eventually be removed from the company, entirely a new brand for a new era. Elena watched her father work, fascinated by the precision of his destruction. He wasn't just taking over a company. He was dismantling a dynasty piece by piece with surgical efficiency. This was power, real power. The kind that moved silently and visibly until it was too late to stop it. And she was his daughter. When the meeting finally ended, Harold remained seated while the other directors filed out. He looked broken, a hollow shell of the arrogant man who had ignored Elena for 3 years. Richard. Harold's voice was barely a whisper. Please. This company is everything my family has built for 3 generations. You should have thought about that before your wife and daughter assaulted mine. I didn't know what they were planning. I swear to you. You knew exactly what kind of people they were. Richard's voice was ice. You watched your wife torment my daughter for 3 years. You never said a word. You never lifted a finger to stop it. I thought it was just women's business. I didn't think. You didn't think. That's the problem. Richard stood. You're a weak man, Harold. You let your wife run your household like a tyrant because it was easier than confronting her. You let her destroy your son's marriage because you didn't want to cause a scene. He leaned forward, his hands on the table. Well, now you're living with the consequences of your weakness. Your wife is being arrested. Your daughter is facing criminal charges. Your company belongs to me. Your son's marriage is over. Harold's face crumpled. What about Marcus? Will you destroy him too? Marcus destroyed himself. Richard straightened. He had a choice last night. He could have protected his wife or abandoned her. He chose abandonment. That's not my doing. That's his. He's my son. Please. And Elena is my daughter. Richard's voice rose for the first time. She begged for help while your family violated her. She called your son's name while she stood there in her underwear in front of 300 people. And he walked away. He got a drink. He turned his back. Harold had no response. Your son made his choice. Now he lives with it. Richard gestured to Elena. We're done here. They walked toward the door. Elena? Harold's voice stopped her. Elena, please. I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I want you to know. I'm sorry. For everything. Elena turned to face him. This man who had looked through her like glass for 3 years. This man who had never once acknowledged her humanity. This man who was now broken and begging. I appreciate you saying that, Harold. Her voice was calm. But apologies don't erase actions. You had 3 years to treat me like a person. You chose not to. Now you're living with that choice. She paused at the door. I hope it was worth it. Then she walked out, her head held high, leaving Harold Thornton alone with the ruins of everything his family had built. The days that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and media attention. Victoria and Sophia were arrested on charges of assault conspiracy and fraud. Their mugshots appeared on every news channel, every website, every newspaper. The women who had spent their lives looking down on others now stood in orange jumpsuits, facing the possibility of prison. Victoria's lawyers tried everything. They claimed the videos were fabricated. They claimed Elena had provoked them. They claimed it was all a misunderstanding. The jury didn't believe any of it. 300 witnesses had watched the assault. 300 phones had recorded it. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Victoria Thornton was sentenced to 2 years in prison for assault and conspiracy. Sophia received 18 months. Harold managed to avoid prison, but just barely. He pleaded guilty to securities violations and received 5 years of probation, along with fines that wiped out most of his remaining personal wealth. The Thornton estate was seized by the bank Richards Bank and put up for auction. It sold for $34 million to a technology executive who planned to tear it down and build something new. The message was clear. The Thornton name was being erased from history, and Marcus disappeared. After the anniversary party, after watching his family's destruction, after losing his wife and his inheritance, and everything he had ever known, Marcus simply vanished. He stopped showing up at the office. He stopped answering his phone. He sold his car, emptied his bank account, and left Boston without a word to anyone. Rumors said he moved to Montana. Others said California. Some said he left the country entirely. Elena didn't care where he went. She only cared that he was gone. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks after the party. True to her word, Elena took nothing. No settlement, no property, no financial claims of any kind. She didn't need Marcus Thornton's money. She had never needed it. What she needed was closure, and slowly, painfully, she was beginning to find it. Elena stood in her father's office on the 47th floor of Ashford Tower, looking out at the city. 3 months had passed since the anniversary party. 3 months of healing. 3 months of learning who she was without the weight of her marriage dragging her down. "You wanted to see me." Richard entered the office, closing the door behind him. "I've made a decision. About your offer. About joining the company." Richard sat down, his expression carefully neutral. "And?" Elena turned to face him. "I want to do it. I want to learn the business. I want to take my place as your heir." Richard smiled, a genuine smile full of pride. "What changed your mind?" "Everything." Elena sat across from him. "For years I ran away from who I was. I thought if I could just be normal, just be ordinary, I would find happiness. But that was a fantasy." "You wanted love." "I wanted to be seen for who I was, not what I had." She shook her head. "But running from my identity didn't help me find that. It just made me vulnerable to people who wanted to use me. The Thorntons. And others like them." Elena leaned forward. "I've spent the last 3 months thinking about what I want my life to look like. And I realized something important." "What's that?" "I can use the power I was born with to help people. Really help them. Not just give money to charity, but create real change." Her eyes were bright with determination. "I want to build something that matters." Richard nodded slowly. "What do you have in mind?" "A foundation. For women escaping toxic relationships." Elena's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "I know what it's like to be trapped in a situation where you feel like you have no power. I know what it's like to be humiliated, degraded, made to feel worthless. And I know that most women don't have a billionaire father who can swoop in and save them. So you want to be that for others?" "I want to give them resources, legal help, financial support, job training, everything they need to rebuild their lives after leaving someone who hurt them." Elena met her father's eyes. "I want to turn what happened to me into something that helps other people." Richard was quiet for a long moment, studying his daughter with an expression she couldn't quite read. Then he stood, walked around the desk, and pulled her into a hug. "I am so proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "So incredibly proud. Does that mean you'll help? I'll do more than help. Richard pulled back his hands on her shoulders. I'll give you everything you need. Funding, staff, office space, whatever it takes to make this foundation the best in the world. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Dad. Don't thank me. This is your vision, your passion. He smiled. I'm just providing the resources. You're the one who's going to change lives. We'll do it together. Together. Richard nodded. The way it should have been all along. Elena hugged her father again, holding tight to the one person who had never let her down. The one person who had loved her unconditionally, protected her fiercely, and believed in her completely. She had lost a husband, but she had found herself. She had been broken, but she was rebuilding. And somewhere in the wreckage of her old life, something new was beginning to grow. 6 months passed like water flowing downhill, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but always moving forward. Elena threw herself into building the foundation with a ferocity that surprised even her father. She worked 16-hour days, learning every aspect of nonprofit management, studying the legal complexities of domestic abuse, intervention, interviewing survivors to understand what they really needed. She named it the Rising Phoenix Foundation. Because that's what we help women do, she explained to her father over dinner one evening. Rise from the ashes of their old lives and become something stronger. Richard smiled proudly. It's perfect. The foundation launched quietly at first, a small office, a handful of staff, a modest budget. But Elena's name carried weight now. The story of what had happened to her at the anniversary party had made international news. Women reached out from everywhere sharing their own stories of humiliation and abuse, thanking Elena for speaking out, asking how they could get help. Within 3 months, the Rising Phoenix Foundation had helped over 200 women escape dangerous situations. They provided emergency housing, legal representation, job training, and counseling. They helped women rebuild credit, find employment, and regain custody of their children. Elena personally met with as many clients as she could. She sat with them in the foundation's comfortable interview rooms, listening to their stories, holding their hands, sharing her own experience when it helped. I know what it feels like, she would tell them. I know how trapped you feel, how impossible it seems to leave. But I promise you, there is a life on the other side, a better life, and we're going to help you find it. The women trusted her because she understood. She wasn't some wealthy do-gooder dispensing charity from a distance. She was one of them, someone who had been broken and humiliated, someone who had survived. That connection made all the difference. Meanwhile, Elena also began her education in the family business. Richard was a patient teacher, walking her through every aspect of Ashford Global Industries, the real estate holdings, the banking divisions, the technology investments, the manufacturing plants. This will all be yours someday, he told her. I want you to understand every piece of it. I never wanted this, you know. Elena looked up from a stack of financial reports. The empire, the responsibility. I just wanted a normal life. I know. Richard sat back in his chair. But maybe that's exactly why you'll be good at it. What do you mean? Most people who inherit wealth see it as their birthright, something they're entitled to. He gestured at the office around them. You see it as a tool, a means to an end. That perspective will make you a better steward of this company than I ever was. I doubt that. Don't. Richard's voice was serious. You've already shown more leadership in 6 months than most executives show in their entire careers. The foundation alone proves that. Elena felt warmth spread through her chest. Her father's approval had always meant everything to her, even during the years she'd stayed away. Thank you, Dad. Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. He smiled. Now, let's talk about the quarterly projections. The work was demanding, but fulfilling. For the first time in years, Elena felt like she had a purpose beyond just surviving. She was building something, creating something, making a difference in the world. The emptiness she'd felt after leaving Marcus, was slowly filling with something else: pride, satisfaction, hope. She was healing. But healing isn't a straight line. It comes in waves with setbacks and surprises that remind you the wound is still there, even when you think it's closed. Elena's reminder came on a Tuesday afternoon in late October. She was in her office at the foundation reviewing case files when her assistant knocked on the door. "Miss Ashford, there's someone here to see you." "I don't have any appointments this afternoon." "I know. He doesn't have an appointment. But he says it's urgent. He says—" The assistant hesitated. "He says he's your husband." Elena's blood ran cold. "Ex-husband," she corrected automatically. "Send him away. He says he won't leave until he talks to you. Security can remove him if you want, but—" Elena closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Part of her wanted to have Marcus dragged out of the building. Part of her wanted to never see his face again. But another part, a smaller, quieter part, wanted closure. Real closure. The kind that only comes from facing what you've been running from. "Send him in." The assistant nodded and disappeared. A moment later, Marcus Thornton walked through the door. He looked terrible. 6 months of self-imposed exile had not been kind to him. His hair was longer unkempt. His clothes were wrinkled and worn. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. This was not the charming, confident man she had married. This was someone broken by guilt and loss and shame. "Elena." His voice cracked on her name. "Thank you for seeing me. I haven't decided if I'm seeing you yet." Elena stayed behind her desk, maintaining distance. "What do you want, Marcus?" "I want to apologize." "You did that already. At the party. It didn't change anything then, and it won't change anything now." "I know." Marcus stayed near the door, not approaching. "I know an apology isn't enough. I know nothing I say can undo what happened, but I needed to try." "Why, to make yourself feel better?" "No." His voice was quiet. "To tell you the truth, the whole truth, things I should have said years ago." Elena studied him for a long moment. The man she had loved looked like a stranger, now worn down by consequences, stripped of everything that had once made him appealing. "You have 5 minutes." Marcus nodded gratefully. "I was a coward. You were right about that. I was a coward my entire life." He began pacing slowly, not meeting her eyes. "Growing up in that family, you have no idea what it was like. My mother controlled everything. Every decision, every relationship, every aspect of my life. If I disagreed with her, she would freeze me out for weeks. Silent treatment, emotional manipulation. She made me feel like nothing unless I did exactly what she wanted." "That's not an excuse." "I know. I'm not making excuses. I'm trying to explain." Marcus finally looked at her. "I learned early that the only way to survive in that family was to go along with whatever my mother wanted. Fighting back wasn't an option. She always won. Always." "So you just gave up?" "Yes." The word came out like a confession. "I gave up. I learned to be passive, to let things happen around me, to pretend I didn't see what was right in front of my face." "Including what they did to me." Marcus's face crumpled. "Yes, including that." 3 years, Marcus." Elena's voice hardened. 3 years of watching your mother tear me apart. 3 years of your sister poisoning everything, and you never said a word." "I know." Do you really understand what that did to me?" Elena stood her hands flat on the desk. "I thought I was going crazy. I thought maybe I really was worthless the way they said. Because if I wasn't, if I had any value at all, surely my husband would defend me. Surely he would say something." "Elena, but you didn't. You just told me to try harder. Like I was the problem. Like their cruelty was my fault for not being good enough." "I was wrong." Marcus's voice broke. "I was so wrong. And I am so sorry." Sorry doesn't help the woman who stood half naked in front of 300 people while her husband walked away. Marcus flinched like she had struck him. "I think about that moment every day," he whispered. "Every single day. I replay it in my head, you calling my name, begging me to help. And I just stood there. Why?" Elena's voice cracked despite herself. "That's what I've never understood. I could have forgiven a lot of things, Marcus. But that moment, why didn't you move? Why didn't you do something?" "Because I was afraid." "Of what?" "Of my mother. Of my father. Of losing everything I'd ever known." Marcus's tears were flowing freely now. "I know how pathetic that sounds. I know there's no excuse. But in that moment when everything was happening so fast, I froze. I couldn't think. I couldn't move. And by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. It was too late long before that night." Elena sat back down, suddenly exhausted. "It was too late the first time your mother insulted me and you told me to be patient. It was too late every time I cried myself to sleep and you pretended nothing was wrong." "I know." "Then why are you here? What do you want from me?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "I want to give you this." He walked forward and placed it on her desk. Elena looked at it but didn't touch it. "What is it?" "A check. For everything I have left." Marcus stepped back. "After everything that happened, after my family lost everything, I managed to save some money. Not much. About $200,000. It's all I have. I told you I don't want your money. It's not for you. It's for your foundation." Marcus's voice was steady now, despite the tears still wet on his face. "I read about what you're building, helping women escape abusive situations, giving them resources to start over." He gestured at the envelope. "I can't undo what happened to you. I can't give you back those 3 years, but maybe I can help someone else. Maybe this money can help some woman who's going through what you went through." Elena stared at the envelope, not knowing what to say. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Marcus continued. "I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for anything at all. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did wrong, and I'm trying to be better." "Where will you go? What will you do without this money?" "I got a job. A real job, not something my father arranged." A ghost of a smile crossed Marcus's face. "I'm working at a construction company in Colorado. Manual labor, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week." "That's quite a change from luxury car dealerships." "It is, but it's good for me." Marcus met her eyes. "I needed to learn what it feels like to work for something, to earn things instead of having them handed to me. My family's money poisoned everything it touched. Maybe starting over from nothing is exactly what I needed." Elena was quiet, processing everything he'd said. The Marcus standing before her now was so different from the man she'd married, humbled, broken, but somehow more real than he'd ever been before. "I'm not going to forgive you, Marcus. I understand. What you did, what you let happen, that's not something I can forgive. Not because I'm holding on to anger, but because some things are simply unforgivable. I know. But..." Elena picked up the envelope. "I will accept this donation. Not for you. For the women it will help." "Why?" Marcus nodded, a look of profound relief crossing his face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm not doing it for you." Elena set the envelope aside. "Now I think you should go." "Yes, of course." Marcus moved toward the door, then stopped. "Elena." "What?" "I hope you find someone who deserves you. Someone who will stand beside you the way I never did." His voice was thick with emotion. "You deserve that. You always deserved that." Elena didn't respond. She just watched as Marcus Thornton walked out of her office and out of her life forever. When the door closed behind him, she sat motionless for a long time, staring at the envelope on her desk. $200,000. Marcus's entire remaining fortune given freely to help women he would never meet. It didn't erase what he'd done. Nothing could erase that. But maybe it meant something. Maybe it meant that people could change, could grow, could become better versions of themselves. Or maybe it was just guilt money, a desperate attempt to buy absolution. Elena didn't know. And in the end, she decided it didn't matter. The money would help people regardless of the motivation behind it. That was enough. She picked up the phone and called her assistant. Process this donation. Anonymous donor. Put it toward the emergency housing fund. Yes, Miss Ashford. Elena hung up and turned to look out the window at the city below. Somewhere out there, Marcus was beginning a new life. Victoria and Sophia were sitting in prison cells. Harold was struggling to rebuild from nothing. And Elena was here building something that mattered. Strange how life worked out sometimes. The gala was Elena's idea. 6 months after launching the Rising Phoenix Foundation, she wanted to celebrate their successes and raise awareness for their mission. Richard helped her plan a black tie event at the Ashford Tower Ballroom, with proceeds going directly to foundation programs. Are you sure you want to do this? Richard asked as they reviewed the guest list. After what happened at the last party you attended. That's exactly why I want to do it. Elena's voice was firm. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life avoiding social events because of what the Thorntons did to me. This is my world now. I'm going to own it. Richard smiled proudly. That's my girl. The night of the gala arrived clear and cold. 500 guests filled the ballroom. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, philanthropists. The room glittered with diamonds and designer gowns, champagne flowing freely, an orchestra playing elegant music. But this time, Elena wasn't an outsider looking in. She was the host, the center of attention, the woman everyone wanted to meet. She wore a deep red gown that matched her confidence, bold, striking, unapologetic. Her hair was styled elegantly, her makeup perfect. She looked like exactly what she was, a powerful woman who had risen from the ashes of her old life. Miss Ashford. A stream of guests approached her throughout the evening. Your work is so inspiring. Thank you for what you're doing for women everywhere. I read about your foundation. How can I contribute? Elena accepted their praise, graciously redirecting credit to her team, sharing stories of the women they had helped. She was a natural at this, connecting with people, inspiring them, making them want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Richard watched from across the room, his heart swelling with pride. This was not the broken woman he had rescued from the cold ground 6 months ago. This was someone transformed, stronger, wiser, more herself than she had ever been. She's remarkable, Commissioner Morrison commented, standing beside Richard. She always was, Richard replied. She just needed to believe it herself. Halfway through the evening, Elena took the stage to address the crowd. Thank you all for coming tonight. She began, her voice clear and strong. 6 months ago, I founded the Rising Phoenix Foundation with a simple mission to help women escape toxic relationships and rebuild their lives. She paused, letting her words settle. Some of you know my story. You've seen the videos. You know what happened to me at a party very much like this one. I was accused of a crime I didn't commit. I was stripped naked in front of 300 people. I was thrown out of my own anniversary celebration like garbage. The room was utterly silent. For a long time I was ashamed of that night. I thought it had broken me. I thought I would never recover from the humiliation, the betrayal, the pain. Elena straightened her shoulders. I was wrong. That night didn't break me. It freed me. She looked out at the 500 faces watching her intently. It freed me from a marriage that was killing my soul. It freed me from in-laws who would never accept me. It freed me from the desperate need to earn approval from people who were incapable of giving it. And it showed me something important, she continued. It showed me that there are millions of women out there trapped in situations just like mine. Women who are being humiliated and degraded by the people who should love them. Women who feel like they have no way out, no hope, no future. That's why I created this foundation. Because every woman deserves to know that there is a way out. There is hope. There is a future beyond the pain. She gestured to a table near the stage where several women sat. "I'd like you to meet some of the incredible women our foundation has helped this year. Maria, who escaped an abusive husband and is now working as a paralegal while finishing her degree. Jennifer, who left a controlling boyfriend and started her own catering business. Susan, who survived 20 years of emotional abuse and is now counseling other survivors." The audience applauded warmly as each woman stood. "These women are the real heroes of tonight, not me, not my father, not anyone with money or power or influence. These women had the courage to leave everything they knew and start over from nothing. They are the phoenixes rising from the ashes." Elena raised her champagne glass. "To the survivors, to the fighters, to every woman who has ever been told she wasn't enough and proved them wrong." The room rose as one glass raised, applause thundering. "You are enough," Elena said, her voice breaking slightly. "You always were enough. Don't let anyone ever convince you otherwise." The applause continued for nearly 2 minutes. When Elena finally stepped off the stage, she was immediately surrounded by guests, wanting to shake her hand, hug her, tell her their own stories. She accepted each embrace, listened to each story, offered comfort and hope where she could. This was what she was meant to do. This was who she was meant to be. Richard found her near midnight as the gala was winding down. "How do you feel?" Elena smiled, a real smile full of genuine happiness. "Like myself. Finally, completely like myself." "Good." Richard pulled her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you, baby girl. Your mother would be so proud." At the mention of her mother, Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Catherine Ashford had died when Elena was just 17, too young to really know her, too young to say goodbye. "Do you think she's watching?" "I know she is." Richard's voice was thick with emotion. "And I know she's smiling." They stood together in the middle of the ballroom, father and daughter, surrounded by the evidence of everything they had built together. Outside the windows, the city sparkled with a million lights. Inside, Elena Ashford finally felt at peace. The gala raised over $12 million for the Rising Phoenix Foundation, enough to expand their services, open new offices, help thousands more women in the coming year. But more important than the money was the message that survivors could become advocates, that victims could become victors, that the worst moments of your life could become the foundation for your greatest achievements. Elena Ashford had been stripped naked in front of 300 people. Now she stood before 500 fully clothed in her own power, her own identity, her own truth. The Thorntons had tried to destroy her. Instead, they had created something they never could have imagined. They had created a phoenix. 1 year after the anniversary party that changed everything, Elena Ashford stood in the lobby of the Rising Phoenix Foundation's new headquarters. The building was beautiful. A renovated warehouse in downtown Boston that they had transformed into a sanctuary for survivors. Bright windows let in natural light. Comfortable furniture filled the waiting areas. Artwork, created by foundation clients, covered the walls, each piece telling a story of survival and renewal. Elena ran her hand along the reception desk, remembering how far they had come. 12 months ago, the foundation had been nothing but an idea and a dream. Now they had helped over 2,000 women escape dangerous situations. They had opened offices in 5 cities. They had become one of the most respected domestic violence organizations in the country. "Miss Ashford," her assistant approached. "The caterers are setting up for tonight's event, and your father called. He'll be here by 6. "Thank you, Sarah." Elena smiled. "Is everything ready?" "Almost. But there's one thing." Sarah hesitated. "There's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. She says her name is Victoria Thornton." Elena's smile faded. Victoria, the woman who had orchestrated her humiliation, the woman who had torn the clothes from her body, the woman who had spent 2 years in prison for what she had done. "She was released last week," Sarah continued quietly. "I can have security remove her if you want." Elena was silent for a long moment, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to say yes, wanted to never see Victoria's face again, wanted to pretend the woman didn't exist. But another part remembered something her father had told her months ago. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about facing what happened and choosing to move forward anyway. Send her in. Are you sure? Yes. Elena straightened her shoulders. But stay close, just in case. Sarah nodded and disappeared. Elena walked to her office, her heart pounding. She had imagined this moment many times, what she would say to Victoria if they ever met again, how she would feel, what she would do. Now that it was actually happening, she felt strangely calm. The door opened, and Victoria Thornton walked in. She looked nothing like the elegant society woman Elena remembered. Prison had aged her badly. Her hair was gray and thin, her face lined with wrinkles that hadn't been there before. She wore simple clothes, nothing designer, nothing expensive. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a worn handbag. This was not the woman who had terrorized Elena for 3 years. This was someone broken, diminished, humbled by consequences she had never imagined. Elena. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Thank you for seeing me. I haven't decided if I'm seeing you yet. Elena stayed behind her desk, maintaining distance. Why are you here, Victoria? I needed to see you. I needed to... Victoria stopped, her voice catching. I needed to apologize. Properly. Face to face. You had plenty of chances to apologize before you went to prison. You chose not to. I know. I was still angry then, still convinced that somehow this was all your fault. Victoria shook her head slowly. It took me a long time to understand how wrong I was. And now you understand? Yes. Victoria met Elena's eyes. I understand that I destroyed my own family. I understand that I ruined my daughter's life, my husband's business, my son's marriage. All because I couldn't accept that he had chosen someone I hadn't approved of. It was more than that, Elena said quietly. You didn't just disapprove of me. You hated me. You wanted to destroy me. Yes. Victoria's voice broke. Yes, I did. And I don't even know why anymore. Looking back, I can't remember what I was so afraid of. You were kind and patient, and you loved my son genuinely. You were everything I should have wanted for him. But I wasn't rich. I wasn't from your world. No. And that terrified me. Victoria sank into a chair uninvited, suddenly looking very old. My whole life I measured everything by money and status. It was how I was raised. It was all I knew. She looked around Elena's office at the awards on the walls, the photos with foundation clients, the evidence of everything Elena had built. You've done so much good, Victoria whispered. All this helping women who were hurt the way I hurt you, and I'm the reason you needed to create it. You're not the reason. You're part of the reason. Elena's voice was steady. There are millions of women being hurt by people like you every day. My foundation exists because abuse exists, because cruelty exists, because too many people believe they have the right to destroy others. I was one of those people. Yes, you were. Victoria was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Elena. I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry. I know those words mean nothing after what I did. I know I can never undo the harm I caused, but I needed to say them. I needed you to know that I see now. I see what I was. Elena watched her former mother-in-law cry, feeling something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, she wasn't sure she would ever truly forgive Victoria, but something else. Something like release. Where will you go now? Elena asked. What will you do? Victoria wiped her tears with shaking hands. I don't know. Harold divorced me while I was in prison. Sophia won't speak to me. Marcus disappeared years ago. I have nothing left. No money. Nothing. Everything was seized or spent on legal fees. Victoria laughed bitterly. I used to be terrified of poverty. I used to think people without money were lesser somehow. Now I'm one of them. And how does that feel? Terrifying. Victoria met Elena's eyes, but also clarifying. When you have nothing, you can see clearly what really matters. family, love, human connection. All the things I threw away because I was too obsessed with status to value them. Elena was quiet for a long moment. I'm not going to forgive you, Victoria. I don't expect you to. What you did to me, what you planned, what you executed, it was calculated cruelty. You wanted to destroy me, and you almost succeeded. I know. But I'm not going to carry anger toward you either. Elena stood and walked to the window. I spent too many years letting your family control my emotions. First trying to earn your approval, then being devastated by your cruelty. I'm done letting you affect me. She turned to face Victoria. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you walk out of this office, and I'm going to move on with my life. I'm not going to think about you. I'm not going to worry about you. You're simply going to stop existing in my world. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is. Elena walked to the door and opened it. Goodbye, Victoria. I hope you find peace. I truly do. But I hope you find it far away from me. Victoria stood slowly, her movements those of a woman much older than her years. She walked to the door, then stopped. Elena. What? The foundation you've built. The women you've helped. The lives you've changed. Victoria's voice trembled. That's your revenge. Not your father's money or power. Not the destruction of my family. This, what you've created, this is the real victory. Elena considered the words. It's not revenge. It's purpose. There's a difference. Maybe that's why it's so powerful. Victoria wiped her eyes one final time. Thank you for seeing me, for letting me say what I needed to say. You've said it. Now go. Victoria Thornton walked out of Elena's office and out of her life forever. Elena stood alone in the doorway, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of that encounter settle into her bones. She had imagined confronting Victoria so many times. She had imagined screaming at her, cursing her, making her suffer the way Elena had suffered. But the reality was different. Quieter. More final. She didn't need to make Victoria suffer. Life had already done that. And Elena had something better than revenge now. She had purpose. She had meaning. She had a life that was truly her own. That was enough. The anniversary gala that evening was the Foundation's biggest event yet. 1 year since the Rising Phoenix Foundation launched. 1 year since Elena had decided to turn her pain into purpose. 700 guests filled the ballroom, including some of the most influential people in the country. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, all gathered to celebrate the Foundation's success and support its mission. Elena wore a gown of deep gold, tonight the color of phoenixes, of rising suns, of new beginnings. Her hair was swept up elegantly, diamonds at her throat that her father had given her for her 30th birthday. She looked radiant. She felt radiant. You're glowing. Richard found her near the stage where she would soon address the crowd. Nervous? Not even a little. Elena smiled. I know exactly what I want to say. That's my girl. He kissed her forehead. I'm so proud of you. Have I mentioned that lately? Only about 100 times. Well, make it 101. I am so incredibly proud of the woman you've become. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. Don't make me cry before my speech. My makeup is perfect. Richard laughed. Go get them, baby girl. Elena took the stage to thunderous applause. 700 faces looked up at her, donors, supporters, survivors, staff members who had dedicated themselves to the Foundation's mission. Her people, her community, her family. Thank you all for being here tonight, she began. 1 year ago, I stood on a stage very different from this one. I was scared. I was broken. I was just beginning to understand what my life could become. She paused, letting the words settle. Most of you know my story. You know about the night that changed everything, the accusations, the humiliation, the moment when I lost everything I thought I had. But I want to tell you about a different moment. A moment that happened later that night when I was sitting on the cold ground outside the Thornton estate, wearing nothing but a stranger's jacket, convinced that my life was over. Elena's voice strengthened as she continued. I made a phone call that night. I called my father and told him I needed help. And he came with helicopters and lawyers and security teams with the full force of his considerable power. For a long time I thought that was the turning point. I thought my father's intervention was what saved me. And in some ways it was. He gave me resources and protection when I had nothing. But that's not really what saved me. She looked out at the audience, making eye contact with individual faces. What saved me was a decision I made in that moment of absolute despair. I decided to stop trying to earn approval from people who would never give it. I decided to stop measuring my worth by someone else's opinion. I decided that I was enough exactly as I was without wealth or status or the Thornton name. That decision, that one moment of clarity, changed everything. Elena gestured to the foundation staff seated at a special table near the stage. In the past year, our foundation has helped over 2,000 women make that same decision. Women who were trapped in abusive marriages. Women who were being controlled and manipulated. Women who had been told over and over that they were worthless, that they deserved the pain they were receiving, that no one would believe them if they spoke up. We helped them see the truth. We helped them find their strength. We helped them discover that they too were enough. The audience was silent, captivated. Tonight I want to share some numbers with you. In 12 months, the Rising Phoenix Foundation has provided emergency housing to over 800 women and children. We've helped 500 women escape dangerous situations through our legal assistance program. We've provided job training and placement services to 300 survivors. We've funded counseling for over 1,000 women dealing with trauma. The applause was immediate and sustained. But numbers don't tell the whole story, Elena continued when the room quieted. Let me tell you about Maria. She gestured to a woman seated at one of the front tables. Maria came to us 9 months ago. She had been married for 15 years to a man who controlled every aspect of her life, what she wore, who she talked to, how she spent every dollar. He never hit her, but he destroyed her spirit systematically, day by day, year by year. When Maria finally found the courage to leave, she had nothing. No money, no job skills, no support system. Her husband had isolated her from everyone who might have helped. Our foundation gave Maria emergency housing. We helped her get a restraining order. We provided job training and helped her find employment. We connected her with a therapist who specializes in survivors of emotional abuse. Elena smiled at Maria, who was crying softly. Today, Maria works as a paralegal at one of Boston's top law firms. She has her own apartment. She has friends. She has a life that belongs entirely to her. Maria, would you like to say something? Maria stood slowly, her voice trembling but clear. Before the foundation found me, I didn't think I deserved to exist. My husband had convinced me that I was nothing without him, that no one would want me, that I should be grateful he tolerated me at all. She wiped her tears. Elena and her team showed me that wasn't true. They showed me that I had value, that I was worthy of love and respect, that I could build a life of my own. I'm not just surviving anymore, I'm thriving, and I owe that to the Rising Phoenix Foundation. The applause was overwhelming. Elena waited for it to subside, then continued. Maria's story is one of thousands. Each woman we help has her own journey, her own challenges, her own path to healing. But they all share one thing in common. They all discovered that they were enough. She looked out at the audience one final time. That's what this foundation is really about. Not just providing services, though we do that. Not just giving resources, though we do that too. We're about helping women discover the truth about themselves, that they are valuable, that they are worthy, that they deserve better than what they've been given. Every woman in this room, every woman watching this speech later, every woman who has ever been made to feel small or worthless or invisible, I want you to hear me clearly. Elena's voice rose powerful and certain. You are enough. You have always been enough. And no one, no husband, no parent, no in-law, no one has the right to make you feel otherwise. If you're in a situation where someone is trying to diminish you, please know that there is help. There is hope. There is a way out. And there are people who will stand with you on the journey. Thank you all for supporting our mission. Thank you for believing in survivors. Thank you for being part of this community of hope. Together, we're not just helping women escape bad situations. We're helping them rise, like phoenixes, like flames that cannot be extinguished, like the strong, beautiful, powerful women they were always meant to be. The audience rose as one applause thundering through the ballroom. Elena stood at the podium, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support and love. This was her life now. This was who she had become. Not Elena Mitchell, the woman hiding from her wealth. Not Elena Thornton, the woman trying to earn approval from people who despised her. But Elena Ashford, daughter, leader, advocate, survivor. She had been stripped naked in front of 300 people. Now she stood before 700 clothed in her own power, her own truth, her own unshakable sense of self. Richard found her after she left the stage, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Your mother would be so proud." He whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so proud. Thank you, Dad. For everything. For saving me that night. For believing in me. For helping me build all of this. I didn't build anything. You did." Richard pulled back to look at her. "I just provided resources, the vision, the passion, the determination. That was all you." Elena smiled through her tears. "We make a good team." "The best team." Richard kissed her forehead. "Now go mingle with your guests. You have donors to thank and survivors to inspire." Elena spent the rest of the evening moving through the crowd, accepting congratulations, listening to stories, connecting with the women her foundation had helped. Each conversation strengthened her resolve. Each story reminded her why she had chosen this path. Near midnight, she found herself standing alone by one of the tall windows looking out at the city lights. The party continued behind her, music and laughter and the warm buzz of community. But Elena needed a moment of quiet, a moment to reflect on everything that had brought her here. 1 year ago, she had been broken, humiliated, convinced that her life was over. Now she was leading a foundation that had helped thousands of women. She was learning to run a $50 billion company. She was building a legacy that would outlast her. And most importantly, she was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way she had never been during her marriage. Quite a journey. Elena turned to find her father standing beside her. "I was just thinking about that." "What conclusion did you reach?" "That everything happens for a reason." Elena looked out at the city. "I know that sounds like a cliché, but if the Thorntons hadn't done what they did, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have the foundation. I wouldn't have found my purpose." Silver linings. More than that. Elena turned to face him. "I'm grateful. Not for the pain, I would never wish that on anyone. But for what came after. For the person I've become. For the life I'm living now." "That's very wise." "I learned from the best," she smiled. "You always told me that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, about taking what life throws at you and using it to become better. You've certainly done that." "I had help." Elena took her father's hand. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Yes, you could have." Richard's voice was firm. "You would have found a way. You would have survived and thrived with or without my money and power. Because that's who you are. That's who you've always been." "How do you know?" "Because I know my daughter." Richard squeezed her hand. "You're a fighter, Elena. You always have been. The Thorntons just gave you something to fight for." Elena felt tears threatening again, but this time they were tears of joy, of gratitude, of peace. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, baby girl. More than you'll ever know." They stood together by the window, father and daughter, looking out at the city that had witnessed Elena's destruction and her rebirth. Behind them, the party continued. Survivors laughed and talked and celebrated their freedom. Donors wrote checks that would help even more women escape. Staff members planned next year's expansion, dreaming of the lives they would change. The Rising Phoenix Foundation was just beginning. and Elena Ashford was exactly where she was meant to be. The night ended, as all nights must, with guests departing and staff cleaning up and the ballroom gradually emptying. Elena stayed until the last person left, thanking everyone personally, making sure each survivor knew how valued they were. When she finally walked out into the cool night air, the city was quiet. The stars were hidden by clouds, but Elena didn't need to see them to know they were there. She thought about Victoria, broken and humbled, starting over with nothing. She thought about Marcus somewhere in Colorado, learning what it meant to earn his own way. She thought about Sophia and Harold, their lives in ruins, their legacy destroyed. And she thought about herself, the woman she had been, the woman she had become, the woman she was still becoming. The Thorntons had tried to destroy her. They had stripped her naked in front of 300 people, tried to brand her a thief, thrown her out like garbage. But they had failed. They had failed because you cannot destroy someone who refuses to be destroyed. You cannot break someone who chooses to rise. You cannot defeat someone who turns their pain into purpose. Elena Ashford had been through fire, and she had emerged, not burned, but transformed. She walked to her car, breathing in the night air, feeling the weight of everything she had survived and everything she had built. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new women to help, new battles to fight, new victories to win. But tonight, Elena simply felt grateful. Grateful for her father, grateful for her foundation, grateful for the journey that had brought her here. She had lost a husband who never deserved her. She had gained a purpose that would outlast her. She had been called worthless by people who didn't know her value. She had proven her worth to the entire world. She had been stripped of her dignity in front of hundreds. She had clothed herself in power that no one could ever take away. Elena Ashford was not the broken woman who had sat on the cold ground 1 year ago. She was a phoenix. Rising, soaring, burning with a light that would never be extinguished. And she was finally completely, absolutely enough. She always had been. She just needed to believe it. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to remember their worth today. And remember, no matter what anyone tells you, no matter how low you feel, no matter how broken you think you are enough. You have always been enough. You will always be enough. Never let anyone convince you otherwise.